will not match. So God, as defined by Spiritism, is this supreme intelligence and the first cause of all things, which we are going to detail more on a different live. Today, that's not the point. From God, two things emanate. Two things emanate. And you see here on your screen. One of them is called spiritual principle. The word principle means something that is about to be ready, or it's potentially available, something along those lines. For example, a seed to the tree is a principle. The tree is not in there all formed and big and nothing, but potentially it is in there. That's what the word principle entails here. So spiritual principle. So from here, with some sort of development, spirits are going to come out from this seed. Okay, we're going by analogy. So from God, two things emanate. This is one of them, spiritual principle, and the other is what we call the universal cosmic fluid, which it's going to be a separate live altogether to explain this. But for now, it's one of the God's emanations. This universal cosmic fluid, we also call it material principle because it contains all the seeds, let's use the word seeds, of anything that one day can potentially be matter. It's not matter as we know yet, but it could be. It has to go through some transformations. But that's why we call material principle. So in short, so far, we have seen that from God, there are two things that emanate: spiritual principle, material principle. Everything in creation, everything, 100% of the creation exists because the spiritual principle interacts with the material principle. And you can see here, looking at the visual, at the graphic, they are completely independent. There is no common point, common traces. There's no intersection between the two squares or rectangles because they are completely 100% independent. Now, the spiritual principle is going to act upon the material principle to form things. That's how creation, everything in creation comes about. How is that done? In simple words, because we just want to get to spirit and matter. The spiritual principle has to learn how to manipulate, operate, and use the most basic elements of the material principle. So for a very long time, we thought that the minimum piece, the minimum element of the material principle was the atom. Turns out the atom today is this gigantic thing because we know that the atom is formed of, by electrons, protons, neutrons, which have subparticles, and it goes on and on and on and on. So the spiritual principle to interact with the material principle has to learn how to do that at its very basic level. It cannot start from the atom because the atom now, we know it's not the minimum basic element. So you will have to learn how to interact with the basic elements of the material principle. To our knowledge, scientific knowledge today that we know of, they are quarks, leptons, bosons, hadrons. There's a bunch of them. I'm sure in the future we're going to find out that these guys are also gigantic. There's subparticles to these ones. So for now, based on scientific knowledge, these are supposed to be the minimum, the basic, very basic particles of the material principle. So the spiritual principle has to develop this, just like if you give a set of Lego toys to a child, on the first day, they're not going to be able to do anything. They're going to get the pieces put on their mouth. They're going to throw away because they don't know what to do with them. With time, they're going to figure out that, one little piece can join another little piece, and it goes from there. It's a little bit of trial and error. Same thing here. So when the spiritual principle is good enough in handling the basic particles, it goes to the next level. So now you can manipulate quarks and leptons and bosons and hadrons and all of those things to form electrons, protons, and neutrons. When it learns how to do that, now we can go to the next level, which is use those three particles to form atoms. And then learning atoms, it can combine atoms to form molecules. And then it can combine molecules to form minerals. That's how the entire mineral kingdom is born. So you see, so far, and this is a long process, but so far we have not spoken anything about life. There's no living being here. Now the next level is the spiritual principle has to develop the ability to infuse life into these elements, minerals. When it learns that, which is called the vital principle, which is part of the material principle, it's embedded in there somewhere, somehow. It's not the point today. When it learns how to use the vital principle to infuse life into inert matter, then we don't call that spiritual principle anymore. It's kind of it graduated. You got a diploma, if you will. And it just gets a different name to differentiate things. If we use the same name for something that is very basic up here or very, very advanced over here, it gets complicated. Vocabulary won't tell us the whole story. So we change the name after, quote, please, graduation, right? And we call intelligent principle. So the intelligent principle, it ties into life, beings, living things. And it will use the vital principle, and it will continue to interact with the material principle to form more complicated things, not only atoms and molecules like it was before. It will be able to form the entire plant's kingdom. And it will continue learning and developing to form the next level up, which is the entire animal kingdom. We're not discussing this in details because that's part of another discussion on evolution. That's not today's approach. We just need to contextualize everything here. So when the intelligent principle then has advanced so much that it can form life in the way that you see here on the screen, you will get to its next level. You will get a second diploma, if you will. You will graduate to the third level, which is the spirit. So you see, until the animal kingdom, the intelligent principle cannot sustain individuality with its own consciousness. It cannot. But when it learns how to do that, then it becomes an individual, an intelligent principle individualized. This is a huge name. Can you imagine all the time saying individualized intelligent principle? Too complicated. Let's give it a shorter name. Spirit. That's what a spirit is. So the spirit will continue the interaction with the material principle to form other things. And it's going to form things that we can roughly, again, we're just laying out here. It's not to detail this today. It's for future. But it will form imponderable matter and ponderable matter. Imponderable matter is everything that we cannot see with we cannot perceive with our five senses. Okay, ponderable matter is anything that we can perceive with our five senses. So we can hear, listen, see, look and see. Those are ponderable things, ponderable matter things. This is, so far, the whole thing that makes us, we're just doing this to get to know how to learn how to get to the spirit level. So we come from spiritual principle, we pass through an intelligent principle, and we got to spirit. So let's simplify a little bit the visual here, because it's getting too complicated, too polluted. So I'm going to clean up things a little bit. So now we have spiritual principle and material principle. And we know that the spirit can form ponderable matter and imponderable matter. So we are just going to call that matter. Let's make things simple. The simplest, the easier to understand. So now we have spiritual principle and material principle at the initial level, the very basic level. And down here, we have spirit and matter on a much more developed or advanced stage. Let's clean up the picture again. So here we go. On the top, God's still in control. It always will be, of course. So if we look at the first layer, which are the boxes on the top, spiritual principle and material principle, they have a connection because both of them, they come from God. So the three things, right, the three boxes, okay, they are together all the time. They're bonded together because spiritual principle and material principle are emanations from God, creations from God. Now, if you want to look at the most advanced level, so instead of reporting back to the spiritual principle, which is the very basic level, if you want to go to a more advanced level, which is the level of the spirit, then we're going to have this. God in control, always, spirit and matter. And that is what Allan Kardec, when asking on question 27, that we are going to look at shortly, the spirits will give you an answer. They will say, this that you see here on the screen, I'm doing visually, God, spirit, and matter, this is what the spirits call universal trinity. So that is the universal trinity of Spiritism. The first part of the Spirit's book is about the creation. And this is part of it. How creation came about. So everything that we went through here in a little bit of detail, not too much, but a little bit, is to get to this level, to understand this connection or this interaction between spirit and matter. And again, God, spirit, and matter form what is known in Spiritism as the universal trinity. And this is the question that generates the answer that we just got to. Question 27. The question posed by Allan Kardec to the spirits, to the highly evolved spirits, is, so are there two general elements in the universe, matter and spirit? Is that so? And the answer is yes. Right? So two general elements, spirit and matter. Yes. And over everything is God, the creator and author of all. So you see, they say yes to matter and spirit, but they add a third thing, which is God above. And they say these three elements, which are the three, matter and spirit and God. These are the three. These three elements comprise the principle of all that exists. They are the universal trinity. I'm going to read the last sentence again to call the attention for something. These three elements comprise the principle of all that exists. What is a principle? It's not necessarily something ready. It's something in potential. It will potentially exist. The material principle is there. is sitting there. If no spiritual principle touches it, nothing happens. But the potentiality is there, the principle is there. So that is question 27, which is the question that led to the title of our talk today, Spirit and Matter. Again, coming back to from the beginning, it generates a lot of confusion, a lot of questions. We're not going too deep into that slide that you saw, because most of what's in that slide has to do with evolution. We just wanted to use the same references that Allan Kardec used to get to ask question 27. And there are more questions around 27 when he's gonna ask, he's asking about the creation to understand the whole thing about spiritual principle, matter, spirit. So there are more interesting questions here. I'm gonna show you another one. Then he's gonna say, okay, so what is exactly the spirit? We touched on that. I explained that it is the intelligent principle when it sustains individuality. So a general answer from the spirits when asked about what is spirit is the intelligent principle of the universe. By answering this way, they are saying, the other side of the slide, if you will, which is the material principle, has no intelligence. The intelligence is on the spiritual side. Matter is inert. Matter can't think. That's why in Spiritism, you hear this all the time. Cells can't do anything. They follow whoever is guiding them. Who is guiding them? The soul, the spirit. So the intelligent principle of the universe is the spirit. And here's one of the questions in the sequence, question 25. Is spirit independent of matter, or is it only a property of matter? You see, he asks 2 or 3 times in different points the same question to make sure he's not testing the spirit. He's testing himself. Am I understanding correctly? So I need to ask again from another angle to see if I understand correctly. So he does that. Allan Kardec does that throughout the entire codification. Very smart. That's called the scientific criteria. Science uses that method. Got to cross-check. I got this answer. Well, what if I try another approach? Am I getting the same answer, yes or no? So he's asking, is spirit independent of matter, or is it only a property of matter? Okay. If spirit were a property of matter, it would be under matter. So matter would be like a master, and the spirit is below, is under it. If the answer was yes, look at the answer. They are distinct from each other. A very straightforward answer. Distinct means there's nothing common. There's no common ground. There's no common points. They don't share anything. They are distinct from each other. But the union of spirit and matter, the interaction between them, is necessary to give intelligent activity to matter. This generates a lot of questions, and I'm going to explain why it was answered this way. We have to go back to how Spiritism started. Just 1 minute, please, 2 minutes, so it makes sense. The phrase makes sense. Spiritism starts when Allan Kardec is invited by a very old friend to watch meetings where they had flying chairs, flying tables, and Allan Kardec says, please, I'm not going to believe that. He's this rational guy, he's philosophical, mind-driven guy. He asks a lot of questions, he asks everything. He said, I'm not going to see anything like this. This is, you can't have anything like this. Don't try to fool me. He was his friend for 25 years. So, okay, he lets go. 1 year after that, another friend, a friend of his for 35 years, says the same thing. I have been going to these sessions, and you can see the, flying tables and chairs. And Allan Kardec said, you too, as a second friend of mine that comes with this thing. I'm not going to believe any of that. So 6 months later, these two friends are in a party, and Allan Kardec is invited to that party. So now the three are together, and the two friends put a little bit of pressure on him. You got to watch because, it's just unbelievable. So in order not to kind of lose connection with the friends, I said, yeah, let me go. Let me just go, and, they'll be happy for my presence, and that's it. I'll never go again. Because before going, he would respond to the friends. How can a table, how can a chair, or whatever object be intelligent enough to fly, to move around? There is no intelligence in the chair. There is no intelligence in the table. That was his argument, trying to avoid going to the meetings. So when he goes for the first time, everything changes, of course, because now he said, he didn't change his position. He said, I'm still 100%, supporting my original opinion. A chair is not intelligent. There is no intelligence in a chair. There is no intelligence in a table, in whatever, a basket, but they fly. So something is causing them to fly. It's not the molecules themselves. It's not the atoms. No. That's why, and all of this that I've been saying, it has been communicated between Allan Kardec and the spirits as he goes along studying and asking and getting answers. That's why these spirits respond almost using his own words, Allan Kardec's words. So in that response, for him, Allan Kardec, it is very satisfying because it goes straight to the point. And it's very satisfying for all of us. So here's the answer. Again, right? They are distinct from each other, matter and spirit. However, the union of spirit and matter is necessary to give intelligent activity to matter. So intelligent activity is not in the matter itself. It's given by the spirit. So it is a complex subject. This is actually a part of a long seminars that we have on the subject. We have 6-hour seminars, 8-hour seminars, explaining all of this, detailing that image that you saw. We go very deep on that because we know it's hard to understand. It's a complex subject. It's abstract. So, we read several times. We have to reread, cross-check, just like Kardec did at his time. And not only that, after Allan Kardec, after the codification, we have many, many, many more books and pieces of information that came also through mediumistic channels, especially Spirit André Luiz. He explains a lot in details on all of these things. So we have a lot more information now than Allan Kardec had himself at his time. He was in the very beginning, of course, he started everything. So spirit and matter, they are independent, but the whole creation is created, right? Yeah, the whole creation is created because of the interaction between spirit and matter. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Hopefully this was clarified a little bit. And If you have any questions, any comments, if you want to, just follow us in one of the channels here, you have the information on the bottom of your screen. So I'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Be well.